Welcome to Sunshine Cathedral's Queer God Squad. It's Wednesday, July 24th, 2024. I'm Reverend Dr. Darrell Watkins, the senior minister here at Sunshine Cathedral.
I am Reverend Dr. Robert Griffin, the executive minister. Faith and religion can be complicated for the LGBTQ+ community. Surveys show that evangelical faith is the justification for the greatest attacks on the LGBTQ+ community.
I am Reverend Kevin Tisdall, the Minister of Education. The Queer God Squad is going to explore our religious community. Let's explore the big news of the day and what it means to you. This is live, and then we are available on demand. If our community is important to you, share this news with your friends and family. Join the conversation on your favorite streaming platform and social media.
At Sunshine Cathedral, we're here to tell you that you're God's miracle, not God's mistake. This is the Sunshine Cathedral perspective. President Biden stands down. Now what? While people coast to coast were enjoying Sunday brunch on July 21st, news apps on cell phones were dinging and singing and ringing everywhere. What was so universally important? Only the President of the United States, also his party's presumed candidate for re-election, announcing that he wouldn't run for another term after all. Speculation about how this harms or re-energizes his party, if the opposition will employ dirty tricks to prevent the vice president from running for the top spot, if the vice president is electable, and if President Biden is victim or hero in this tale, immediately began to spread like hot grease across social media. Is there a queer faith perspective in all of this? And if so, how can it be a healing gift during this unpredictable time? There's a queer faith response to everything. There's got something to say about everything. But this is a confluence of issues because what seems to have led to President Biden's deciding not to run pretty much last minute does seem to be the result of ageist battering. Except good old Joe's kind of a fighter, and that seems unlike him, just to give in to pressure and conflict. But he is a patriot, and he has spent his entire life serving his country. And if he honestly believed that things had gotten so bad that the internal controversy would take away from the fight needed, then he might do this super sacrificial thing for the good of the country. He's 81. He doesn't need anything for his career. He doesn't need the pension. He'll have it anyway. There's nothing. He can spend his last years with his family, with his kids and grandkids and great-grandkids as they come along. Or he can spend it, taking care of the world. He would enjoy, for sure, the latter, is willing to do either. And so there's so much we don't know yet. We're going to hear a lot more. But I suspect somewhere in this story is noble sacrifice on his part, because that's part of his narrative. His opponent couldn't say that about any 3 days of his whole life.
Amen.
But Joe, I was riding with Biden, does have a long career of showing compassion and kindness, of changing his mind about things when needed or necessary or appropriate. He was given credit for helping change the position of the Obama administration on marriage equality.
Yep.
So he's not opposed to changing. He's not opposed to growing and learning. He's up for a fight, but I don't think that he wants to fight for the sake of fighting. If it's worth it, if there's a prize worth winning, then he's up for it. So I don't know exactly what it is, but a lot of the talk, regardless of why he made his decision, what was ugly to me is that a lot of the talk from the peanut gallery, not his advisors, not the party's advisors, not legal counsel, not words with his priest, but from all the social, the armchair pundits all over the socials, was so ageist. He's 81, it's over. He's 81 opposing someone who's 78. At this table, well, if someone within 10 or 15 years of us were at this table, I would say it's an age cohort, it's an age group. Like if I'm with people 45 and I'm with people 70, those people are not zillions of years difference from me in my mind. Now, of course, in high school, a freshman junior would never even look at a freshman. But that little world is way behind us, way behind you. And it's way behind us.
No ageism at this table, ever.
only joyful and kind prodding to the aged and decrepit.
See, there's that.
But no, it was ugly. And
It was.
and it's sort of a double bind, because now that they don't have someone they can use ageist quips against, there will now be racist and sexist tropes, of course. If there's not, and I bet there will be, some attempt to keep it from running at all. Like, so this is going to be really ugly and really stupid. You're going to hear diversity, equality, DEI, diversity, equality, and inclusion. You're going to hear that. Aren't those good words? But you're going to hear them combined together, DEI, as if it were a bad thing. Some are even suggesting it is equal in intent to some of the outrageously racist tropes of the past. Mm-hmm. And so you're going to hear a lot about DEI. You're going to hear a lot about woke. Also, you're going to hear a lot about BLM. And because we can't help it, we eat our young, the left is going to make a big deal about how 40,000 years ago, as a prosecutor, she was a really good prosecutor.
Yeah.
And some of the people she had to prosecute were people of color, as she is a person of color. But so she's going to get it that, you weren't, you were too mean. And others are going to say, oh, she is just as left and liberal and weak and woke and as you can find. So she's going to get it from both sides, and she's going to get it in ways that if a white man had the exact same positions, they wouldn't. In fact, Biden shares those positions. He didn't pick her because she was night and day from him. She picked them because they shared values. And so, but they're going to say things about her that they didn't say about him, because even though they won't say we're going after a woman of color because she's a woman of color, they're going to go after a woman of color in ways that they wouldn't go after if she wasn't a woman of color, because they don't want a woman of color. That's why nobody wants to change the Electoral College, because it is stacked against people of color. That's why people will not want to talk about expanding the Supreme Court, although a congressional vote could do it, because this stacked court limits access to freedom and opportunity to people of color and women. And so, this is the one good thing that's coming out of all this, is that I think she can win. I think he could have won, Biden. But also, they're going to have, at least they've got one thing they can't use anymore. One old guy can't tell the other old guy that he's an old guy because the other old guy is now out of it. And so the super old guy has to tell the really still in the early parts of middle age that she's brilliant and accomplished, and some will say that she's not competent for the job. Well, since her opponent never held political office, or never held a high-ranking military position, or never was an ambassador or cabinet member, or never even ran for office to lose, since he had never done any of that, and she has already been a district attorney, an attorney general, a senator, and a vice president, the idea that she's not qualified, she is as qualified or more so than any candidate of any party we've ever had. In fact, of all the presidents in my lifetime, starting with Johnson, all the way till today, still Biden, there's exactly one person, if you looked at the resume, you'd think, well, this person has no business running for the school board, much less it, and that would not be Kamala Harris. It would be, of course, the person whose name I'm just loath to ever say. Someone said his name in a sermon at Sunshine Cathedral recently, not in a supportive way or whatever, and not in any kind of way, really, just to say that all these things that aren't our shepherd, the Lord is my shepherd, and that means that all these other things aren't. His name was brought up, and economic conditions and abusive families, all these things aren't my shepherd. Then perfectly innocent, and yet to hear his name was triggering for me because I don't ever say it, and but I'm glad he did, because that way God said, because I won't say his name. At this table I have to, but even at that, it feels almost like that's that one swear word where you've gone too far. That's what I feel like when I say his name. So Biden, what do you think about what's happening?
Well, first off, they're going to question her competency her competency was already voted in 4 years ago when
Right.
she and President Biden were elected. America deemed then that she was competent enough to be the next president should anything happen to Biden in the last 4 years. So for me, she's already competent and qualified to do the job. There's no question about that. In our guest preacher's sermon on Sunday also, he went through this little litany of things. And Dr. Robert Lee was here as our guest preacher this past Sunday at Sunshine Cathedral. And you can go online and watch it.
Maybe 2 Sundays when this comes out. But anyway, recently.
Well, recently. You go online, you can watch the sermon from July 21st, and you can see all that. But in a portion of his sermon, he did this litany of things about, do you remember where you were when something happened? And that was a very distinct reality at lunch later when, phones are going off and like, this will be a moment I would never forget. I know where I was when this popped up on social media. And I was
in La Bamba in a year, but I'll always remember the one time that I ate at La Bamba.
So there. And so, but immediately I was like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. It's like, I almost went into a little panic, a state of shock. This thing has now been turned upside down. What's going to happen? Like flooded with lots of questions, lots of people. And then I kind of moved to anger. It's like, who are these people to do this? And how dare they? That little part of, nobody asked me if this was okay. It's like, there was not a democratic process. Meanwhile, there's big wheels turning all over the place, making this happen, making these decisions. And then I kind of came around to the reality of, you know what? If Dr. Jill Biden's okay with it,
Right.
I'm okay with it, because I'm sure she and President Biden have a really good come to Jesus conversation about all this before it happened. And there's also a little moment, and the Rub mentioned in another setting of earlier, I don't know if you mentioned, but like there was also a moment of sadness. Like this was a moment of grief also.
Oh, yes.
And I think this is a moment of national grief. Everybody got caught up into all of the hot grease spilling all over the place that some didn't take in for a moment. Like this is a moment of grief. Something that's changed, and we need to grieve this for a moment. But everyone quickly went from this to the celebration of the next. And I think there's still this moment that we have to pause and like grieve what has happened. I mean, this man's been our president for the last 4 years. He was the presumptive nominee going to a convention next month, and this just all got snatched out. So there was a level of comfortability. There was a level of assurance. There was a level of rallying behind what was already in place. And maybe I'm grieving just a little bit still, while I'm also excited that this was a change that was, I think this only happened once in American history, maybe once or twice in American history has this happened. But still, it was like, I'm grieving a little bit of something about the process, and yet I'm excited about the outcome of all at the same time.
Well, Bobby Kennedy was shot. Like he was the presumptive. I mean, he was
steps away.
Yeah,
from
he was steps
the
away.
Nomination, yeah.
And so yeah, those kind of things happen, but they're rare, and you remember where you were. And I actually written down I was going to say this at the end, but I don't want to say it at the end now because I won't say now because the iron's hot. About the grief piece is one of the things that I felt comfortable with, no matter what. Like people say, of course he doesn't look the way he looked 20 years ago, and he's a little slower, and whatever. Of course, but I said this whole time that they can put a bib around him for the drool. We had a pope who was very incapacitated, and he wouldn't even take medicine for it because he wanted people to see that there's dignity in whatever state of life you're in, whatever condition or whatever. And he ran a global institution, couldn't hold his head up.
JP2.
John Paul II. So first of all, we've already had an example of how even frailty that comes with age doesn't necessarily keep you from being very useful. But also, I said, if they wheel him in and face him against the wall.
That's what I said.
Or if they wheel him in and put him in front of the TV to watch Matlock.
Yes.
I mean, whatever. I'm not even worried about it because he's put together such a good team. If he takes the oath of office and drops dead the next minute, he's got an entire team who can just step up and we won't miss a beat. So that's one of the things that I loved about him. If you look down his cabinet right now, if you look it up online and look at every cabinet member and their credentials and experiences, they're ready. And as a team, they're ready. And as a team, they've already been working together. So his being not what he used to be, I almost wasn't bothered by. Because then you look at his accomplishments, one of the most significant presidencies in the last half century at least. If somebody who's not a master, I almost said debater, but that falls a little odd. Someone who isn't, whose forensic skills aren't what they used to be, but they never were great. Do you remember all the gaffes? I mean, that was his
He was the
brand.
king of gaffes.
That was his brand.
Yes.
He said things backwards and wrong and silly and
Malaprops.
and sometimes he'd get a little angry about stuff. And he's a better communicator now than he was then because he has to take it slow and figure it out. But one debate, and someone told me just yesterday that she watched the debate just to see how he did, and that was the moment she decided it was over for him. One debate, a travel-weary person with a cold facing off against a complete raving lunatic, there's no winning in that. If he were 30 years old and could run a marathon, there's no winning in a situation where there's no prize. So you don't even have time to name all the lies, you know, and then prove that they're lies or whatever. So it's an impossible situation, and then he wasn't feeling well. And in his best day, he was not a great debater. He's never been an orator. So I just think it was a setup to say he's got to be better than he's really ever been. One time ever. We're not gonna wait for a second one. It doesn't matter that the very next day he was public speaking and did fine. He had a bad night and he's old and he needs to go. Those might even have been legitimate arguments back in the primary days when you chose him. Oh, well, no one really ran against him. When you chose not to run anyone against him, and there were 2 or 3 people running against him. So, I just think that's the ageist part to me, is that we set him up, we said we're riding with Biden, and he doesn't get to then have one bad day. That's not how you treat people who has been very good to us. Student loan forgiveness, working on the infrastructure, turning the economy around. The economy was in the toilet, and we've bounced back from that. $35 insulin. Did you ever think the day would happen?
No.
$35 insulin. So this is what addressing climate issues after someone who just said, screw the climate, you know, most of us will probably live through whatever's going on, and the next generation, hell with them, we don't know anyway. Like, it was for him to have basically saved us. And if he did it at this level of capacity, then all I know is he must be a badass. But we have grief and we have guilt. We have grief that this happened to him, and we have guilt that if I don't jump immediately on board on the next person, then I'm not being loyal, you know, because, you know, she needs our every dollar and every word of praise, and that's true. But then if you do that, then you also feel guilt, like, oh, well, we just immediately threw the old guy out because, you know, because this is important now, and, you know, he's done. This has left us in a position where we can't feel super good about ourselves because we either forget the old guy or we take a breath before out loud supporting the woman. So I'm an ageist or I'm a sexist by people's perceptions, no matter what I do right now. Of course I'm going to support her 100%. She was on my dream ticket before Joe. Joe was not my first. Joe got on the ticket, I voted for Joe. And then I'm glad it worked out that way. But if my primary pick had won, we wouldn't be talking about Joe Biden right now because he'd be long retired. But bigger wisdom prevailed. He did a great job. And I think it's just important to acknowledge that you can have all kinds of respect and admiration for Kamala Harris and think she will be one of the 10 best presidents in the history of this country and feel sad for Joe Biden and think that all of this was not handled in the most respectful way. I hope they give him a lot of props at the convention. I'm sure they will. But still, this could have, even with the same result, been done differently.
Just a couple of quick observations.
Oh, this is a long one.
You guys have covered it very, very succinctly. I just was upset about how the drumbeat happened. As you say, we knew last year that he was an octogenarian. We knew that he was slowing down, slower than he used to be. The pressure that came from the media, that came from the so-called
they're so complicit
centralist left-wing media, New York Times, I'm talking to you. How in the heck?
For the last time, because I'm through with the New York Times.
Thank you.
I'm through with the New York Times.
How in the heck can you come out and say that this president that has done so much for America needs to step aside while you did not say a single word about a convicted felon?
Convicted
rapist.
felon.
convicted felon, adjudicated rapist, just go down the list. And all that crap that happened down here in Florida with some of the charges being tossed, that's temporary because that's coming back. But here we have a phenomenal president who picked an amazing vice president who is now ready to be president. I got home Sunday, turned on the TV. The first thing I saw was this. And yes, I had to stop for a moment. I felt not anger, but I felt a great deal of sadness because this is a decent man who's being just talked trash about. So it took me a minute. And I'm still grieving and getting over that. And yeah, I'm one of the ones who's moved forward. I can't wait for President Harris. And by the way, I don't know if you've seen it, but the attacks have started already. Here's one that is going to be central in their attack on this black woman. She has been on the government dole for the past 20 plus years. Do you hear that?
Yeah.
Do you hear that? You don't even need a dog whistle to hear what they're saying. And that was J.D. Vance that said that, somebody who has no history in governance, no idea of how to be a leader. But he's already started with that. And I love the internet, and I believe that this is correct. When Kamala Harris ran for re-election as Attorney General in California, she got a check from a certain realtor from New York City who thought that she was good enough to be the Attorney General then. And now, look at what we have. We have a multiracial person running for president, a woman. She has a Jamaican father. She has a mother from Asia, and she is a stepmother to two gorgeous children. I mean, my goodness.
Her husband is Jewish.
Her husband is Jewish. I mean, what else can you say except, wow. You have a choice now between an amazing human being and
a terrible one.
and a convicted rapist and felon. I don't think it gets easier than that.
And we're not partisan shills. Any party that I could 100% just be on fire for has never won an election. I mean, there's a couple of them out there, but you know, the 30 other people and me who would be a member of it doesn't have any political weight. So yeah, so when we're talking about politicians, we really are talking about issues and individuals.
Yes.
This is not like, oh, I'm so, because right now, the way his party has treated him, I'm not a huge fan of the Democrats right this very moment.
Yeah.
But the opposing folk just embracing flagrant racism and xenophobia, taking away the rights of women, dehumanizing trans people, threatening to roll back LGBTQ plus rights, assaulting the government, the environment. There is supporting a literal assault on our government on January the 6th. So there's this, and there's anyone who's not that. Those are the choices. Yeah. For me, if we were gonna, if all my values or even half of them were to be embraced, it would be a party left of the Democrats. I promise you. So this isn't partisan. Would be like, yeah, too political. No, when you see something that is really as ugly as has ever been, it would be completely immoral not to, and even if you agreed with it, it would be sketchy to not at least say, well, I support this and why. Like maybe it's not as bad as you're saying, and here's why. But when you see a 34-time convicted felon, an adjudicated rapist, a person who has been sued zillions of times, someone who has more criminal investigations and arrests from his administration than any administration, and I mean by more than double of the next highest one. Someone who verbally abuses people, like you can't pretend you didn't hear it and see it. Oh, well, he's not, and he didn't mean, and we all watched him say all of these terrible and abusive things. And so, yeah. And he was a Democrat. In fact, he's been a member of 4 or 5 parties. He was the Independent Party, he was Republican, he was Republican 2 or 3 times. He was a Democrat, and then there was some other, the Reform Party, whatever the Perot thing was.
Oh, New York State.
He has been several parties. So yeah, that this monster happens to be Republican here at this stage in his life. He's been 4 different things politically, each of them a monster. So yeah, this isn't a party thing for me. This is a resisting evil in whatever way you can thing for me. And I think they were pretty united on that front.
Yeah. And the church said,
And I know that we're supposed to have a little bit back and forth. That it's just more, energizing. We can be the view if there's at least one person's like, well, I like him, or at least he did these 3 good things, blah blah blah. But for this one, I can't say his name.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And but much less admit that he did anything good. And certainly anything good with good intentions. He may have accidentally screwed up and done something good a time or two, but it wasn't because he gave a damn about whoever benefited.
And it's not like, it's old as President Biden is, it's not like that we have not had certain senators who had to be taken out of their hospital rooms, put on a hospital gurney, and rolled onto the chamber of the Senate to vote.
that's no lie. That is the
That is
truth.
from Dermot.
That is,
That's it.
We
So,
saw that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we saw that. So all we can do is just Google this stuff. So when you talk about age and all this kind of stuff, and get over yourself. People have gone extra miles of the way to make this country safe for democracy. And I'm not strong. Normally that was another case, but just today, and it was my last day. The former president is now saying that he was honored to take a shot for democracy.
I heard that.
As the
Doesn't that make your ass wanna
secretary
dip
takes
snuff?
steps down for number. I was like, you know what? Please, a shot for democracy, dude. Really? Lots of people know and can see, and we know what it was and what it wasn't. So that incident did not mobilize your base the way you thought it was, and now you have to now defend yourself in front of a prosecutor, in front of a debate.
And if it had blown
so
your
looking
ear
forward
off,
to it.
if it had blown your ear off, you are supposedly on paper a billionaire. I don't know that you have access to a lot of funds really ever, but on paper you are a billionaire. You can do better than a tampon on the side of your face. By this time you could have had reconstructive surgery. Why are you walking around looking like such a fool?
Because it was a political tool.
Yes.
He is making money off of that. Did you not see half of the convention had that maxi pad on their ear
It's the new red hat.
yeah. Anyway, wow.
So
What I did see was a 78-year-old man that every time they panned to him looked like this.
Yeah. And ranted for an hour and a half.
At least it wasn't in court, or you'd have seen everyone around him doing this, because apparently he just farted his way through his trial. But Biden, way too old. Well, that's today. We're God Squad. And by the way, obviously we rejoice that he wasn't taken out, because I don't want that to be.
Oh no.
I don't want that. I don't want him
No martyrs.
I don't want him to be a martyr, and also I just don't want him to get an easy way out. I want him to spend a long life regretting the many terrible things he's done to so many people. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I don't want boom and it's over. No, I want him to be in a chair somewhere, being ignored by most everyone that he's used, that he called family or friends, and just thinking throughout his remaining years, may they be years, saying, "Oh, I wish I had tried to be a person at least a few more times."
George Wallace, he will not be.
Ah.
George Wallace.
See, I never believed George. Like George tried the
Governor
little,
George Wallace.
little redemptive shtick, but I never bought it.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
George Wallace, he will not be. At least he tried, but this one will not even try that. So
No.
And it took him to get into a wheelchair before he tried.
And then that's that.
You're right.
Yeah.
So
Anyway.
Yeah.
Wow.
And he was really jacked up and never once walked out with Kotex on his face. As I said, that's today with the Queer God Squad. We want to thank you for joining us here daily to have, at 3 p.m. to have some fun, especially try to scratch out some fun when the sky seems to be falling, and to discuss what our LGBTQ plus community is talking about.
Sunshine Cathedral is the world's largest progressive queer church. Progressive, queer, and God are words that naturally should go together, and we are all in this together. Remember that.
you are God's miracle, not God's mistake. Until the next time, we are the Queer God Squad. Goodbye.
Bye.